Hello, everyone. Welcome to SPI Health and Safety and Entrac's webinar, COVID-19 Ergonomics and Temporary Teleworking. My name is Amélie Leduc. I'm a marketing advisor here at SPI. For those who may not know SPI, we are actually your partner for companies who value health and safety in their work environment. So I'm going to introduce myself through my webcam, and I'm going to ask my colleague Véronique to do the same thing. Hello, everyone. Hi, Véronique.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm great, thank you. As you folks can see, we are teleworking as well. So in my kitchen. What about you, Véronique?
In my bedroom, away from the kids, actually.
Yes, no kidding, eh? I'm lucky today. They're with their dad, so I'm okay. But I feel you. I feel you. So we're happy to be here today to talk about ergonomics and temporary telework. So I know it's a reality that that we've been kind of throw in, a few weeks back, and then we're trying to adjust. And that's why we created this webinar for you folks today. Véronique is a certified ergonomics specialist and project manager at Entrac, one of our partner company. Véronique, maybe you can talk a little bit more about your expertise as well as what does Entrac specializes in as a Canadian company.
Actually, Entrac, we're a consulting firm. We're specialized in ergonomics, and this year we are actually celebrating our 25th business anniversary. So it's a great year for us this summer. And actually, what really motivates us at Entrac is simply to help people do their work while being comfortable, efficient, and safe. That's it. And me personally, I'm an ergonomist. I'm a certified ergonomist, and also a project manager. So I've been with Entrac for the last 12 years now.
Good. So we have an expert with us today. Awesome. So just before we get into the real topic, the webinar is going to last about 60 minutes. You guys can ask questions as we go along. You do have a little question box on your console. So by all means, ask your questions. We may answer as they come up. We may answer them at the end, depending on the flow of the presentation, but for sure we will answer them. So don't be shy. If you have a question, someone else might be thinking the same thing as you are. Also, there won't be any interactive questions. Some of you are used to our normal webinar, if I can say. So we will not go there. We just want to hear from you, want to make sure that you guys will be prepared to spend the next few weeks teleworking from home. However, we will ask you to answer our famous survey at the end. That always helps us to see where we're good at and where we need to improve. And as you know, we are teleworking, me and Véronique. So the reality is that sometimes the internet may slow down or whatnot. So bear with us. We cannot be more live than we are right now. All right. So before we will get to start, but I just want to say thank you for all of those who are practicing social distancing and staying at home. You're helping people to stay safe, but also thank you so much to those who are working really hard to fight this virus, and everyone supporting them. So from the police officer to the grocery clerk to the concierge at the hospital or whatever. Thanks everybody for everything that you're doing in this time of pandemic. That's really much appreciated. So basically, Véronique, maybe you can talk about what we're going to be seeing today in terms of, the content, the objectives.
Yes, the webinar was created for people who start teleworking without being prepared to it. So that's really the spirit in which we are presenting the information. The purpose is to give you tips and tricks on how to adapt your workstation, how to be comfortable, how to be efficient, and just be a bit more ergonomics at home.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't know if we keep the webcam open with the internet or...
Yeah, we should actually, you know what? It's a good point. We wanted to close it to ensure that you guys would have the best presentation possible. So we'll shut down our camera, but we're still working from home. And if anything, like I said, just send your questions over. All right. So let's start with the challenges of telework as one being the internet.
Yeah. And the two other challenges are actually, well, if we look at the first one, it's the laptop. It's a device that has many advantages, especially in terms of mobility, and because they're small, they're easy to use everywhere. But on the other hand, it's an advantage of being small, but it becomes a disadvantage when we linger on the postural side. The fact that the keyboard and the screen are connected and the screen is small, it causes postural constraint that we also call in ergonomics awkward postures, and especially true for the neck, which is found to be in flexion. It's also true for the shoulder, who are often tense and elevated, and for the wrist, which are frequently found in extension or deviation. Deviation is actually a movement from side to side. And we also found some mechanical pressure or pressure points underneath the wrist or the carpal tunnel, so on the edge of the laptop and the surface of the workstation. So that's why we have some challenges with telework. The other challenges are regarding the home environment, simply because it's not conceived for computer work. Simply, it's just simple as that, and so it needs to be adapted to this new reality.
Absolutely. I think that I don't know for people in our audience, but I'm starting to feel those pain points, those pressure points. So it's a good thing that I think this webinar comes to a perfect timing with the announcement of the government to continue the confinement. So before presenting the strategies, Véronique, for being comfortable working from home, maybe take a minute to explain the basic ergonomic guidelines.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good thing to present before the strategy. It's important to remember the basic principle of office ergonomics. Actually, we want to find out what we are aiming for, and this is what we call the neutral posture. What we actually call a neutral position or neutral posture is when the joints, the muscles, the tendons can do their job effectively and with minimal strain on the tissue. So that's what you see on the screen right now. So if we look at the specific points, we usually start from the bottom, so from the feet to, and we go all the way up to the head. And what we first want is to have our feet flat on the ground, something solid, because it's going to ensure a stable position for the rest of the body. So that's the first point we are looking for. Then we want to have the knee and the hips at the same level. This will ensure to have an even pressure underneath the leg. So it's going to be way more comfortable this way. And then we are looking at the back. The back, actually, we have the spine, who has three natural curves. And we want to keep those curves while we are sitting. So we have the curves from the neck, cervical curve. Then we have the one in the upper back. And then we have the one in the low back, which is the lumbar curve. And what we want a chair that's gonna Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, sorry again. I'm losing the pointer. Sorry, like I said, we're live, so bear with us.
So what we want actually a chair with a back that's going to support those three curves and allows us to maintain it without much effort. So that's why you see at the low end of the backrest a little lump. Actually, this one is to support the lumbar hollow that tends to disappear when we sit. So we have like a pelvic tilt that happen when we sit down, and we want to and it makes us lose our curve or lumbar hollow. So we want the chair to support this part of the body well, so we have a good position. And then we also want to have our shoulders relaxed, so we don't want them to be tense or elevated. And a good way to do that is to keep the elbow close to the body. So by having the elbow close to the body, we can have this position without having the shoulder working hard to maintain it. Then we also want to have the elbow at the same level as the wrist. This is particularly important because we don't want any pressure points at the forearm or the wrist, and this allows us to have a neutral posture at the wrist, so no extension, no flexion also. And then finally, we look at the neck and at the head, we want the computer screen, the top of the computer screen, to be pretty much at the eye level. So this allows us to look at the information on the screen without having to flex our neck. So we are in a nice neutral posture. Just a quick note on those of you who are wearing progressive lenses. If that's your case, then you need to change a little bit the position of your screen. What you need to do is to lower the screen from what you see on the drawing here. So with progressive lenses, you need to look at the bottom of the lens. Therefore, what you want to lower the screen so you don't have to do an extension, so to bend your head back while you are reading the information on the screen. So that's the little precision I wanted to make. So pretty much that's the position we are, the neutral posture that we are aiming for our strategies for telework.
Good. How to
Yes,
work with
so
the laptop.
yeah, exactly. So the laptop, the first advice is to use auxiliary equipment as much as possible. So if you have access to it at home, definitely it's a good thing to use it. The majority of you probably already have an external mouse, and it remains the basic tool to have, since it makes it possible to increase the ease in which we can use the cursor, and to reduce the constraint at the wrist. Like I said earlier, when we use the touchpad, that's where we have a lot of pressure points and deviation movement. So that's the movement that we want to get rid of, and the mouse actually makes it pretty simply. And also, in an ideal world, you would also have access to external keyboard with your mouse. Why? Well, simply because it allows you to separate the keyboard from the screen, which, as we saw earlier, is one of the drawbacks of the laptop. So we can see it right now on the screen. You can see on the left the position of the elbow, which is much lower than the wrist while the person is working on his laptop. And if we use the mouse and the keyboard, what we can do is we can push back the laptop and we can elevate it. So since it's not connected anymore to the keyboard and the mouse. So it allows us to have a neutral posture at the neck and to be much more comfortable, actually.
And actually, Véronique, I think your team has let its creativity go in order to find alternative solutions to make it more ergonomic. It's pretty cool. I'll share a few.
Yeah, actually, so some of my colleagues used game boxes that they had in their home. They also use books. This is a wooden box that was, I don't know what it was for, but it's working great for this person. And also, if you have kids, you have an infinite number of solutions. The limit is your creativity, honestly. You can use Lego like this one. This is my favorite one because it's really cool. It acts also as when you put your paper, so you can look on the keyboard. So this is a great solution. So what you have to remember is use what you have at work. That will at work, at home.
At work.
Yeah, that would allow you to have the screen at the good height for yourself.
And you mentioned for those who have kids, I don't know for you, but at some point we're running out of ideas to have them, play around. So that could be, hey, let's create a support for mama's laptop. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah,
Tackling
that's a good idea.
two problems with one solution.
Yeah, and also if you have access to an external monitor, definitely it's a good idea to use it, mainly because it optimizes the size of the information that is going to be displayed, thus reducing the eye strain, and it allows less use of the mouse also, because you don't have to scroll up and down all the time. So definitely it's a good solution also. Just keep in mind that depending on the size of your monitor, you may have to elevate it also with books or a box or anything. Just remember that the top of the screen needs to be at the eye level, unless you are wearing progressive lenses, in which the screen needs to be lower.
And we actually have a question, and I think it's interesting that I stop you there to answer it, Véronique. Louis is asking, well, he's mentioning that someone has told him, why don't you use your left hand, like the mouse in your left hand, to reduce the stress you'll put on the right hand that you usually use. Obviously, he's a right-handed person, but use the other
Yeah.
hand of, the what you usually do. That could be an
Yeah.
option too, right?
Yes, it could be an option because we don't want only to have the right hand to do everything. So it's a good thing to use the left hand a little bit more. What we have to consider though, it's not everybody is able to switch
Yeah.
and use the other hand. Some people has a facility to do it, so that's good, or ease to do it, but for other it's harder.
Yeah.
The reason why we often use the mouse from the left hand is when we have the regular keyboard, which are really large with the number pad.
Mhm.
It brings a rotation of the right shoulder. So usually that's why we use the left hand for the mouse, because it eliminates that rotation of the shoulders. But it could also be a good solution for teleworking if you're able to do it, of course.
Yeah, of course, that's interesting. Okay. We've been working from home. Well, I've been working from home for at least 3 weeks. I've been using my cell phone like crazy for a lot of meetings. I'm starting to feel pain in my neck.
Mm.
I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I see people saying, yes, me too, me too. So, is there a trick you could give me and our audience?
Well, actually, it's not that much of a trick. It's just use the headphones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just as simple as that. And I know in our workstation at work, we're used now to see people with headsets. Because when we are using the phone while being on the computer, we see what the position that you see on the screen on the left and on the center, someone who's trying to hold the phone with their shoulders and here. And so this position is really not suitable for the neck. We really want to eliminate that as much as possible. So with headphones, it's just pretty easy to do. And also what we need to consider, even if you're not doing a conference call or you are not using the computer at the same time as your cell phone, you should still use your headphone, because most of us still incline the head on the side while we are using our cell phone. So we still have this position. So just to get our hands free and to be in a neutral posture, definitely to use the headphones is a good practice as soon as possible, as more as possible.
Yeah, that could actually become a natural habit after this confinement or this teleworking situation. It's a good point.
Yeah, and also often the sound is just better. So
Yeah, it's true. So if we have access to this equipment, obviously it's a plus for us to optimize our posture, but the reality is that not everyone has had the time to get organized. So what can we offer them for the upcoming weeks in terms of alternatives?
yeah, that's true. So there are three alternatives that we can do to be more comfortable. The first one is about the position of the laptop on the table. So the first thing to do is to get as close as possible from to the table and push the laptop away just a little bit. So by doing this, it actually reduces the chance that your back will round off or take off from the chair because you want to get closer because you are right next to the table. And so you will have a better position for your back. And then also it allows you to rest a large part of your forearms on the table. So it releases the tension in the shoulders. And you also have much less pressure points. So if you look at the pictures on the left, we see that the elbow is much lower than the wrist. And then we have some pressure points underneath the wrist from the corner of the table. And so by pushing the laptop, you can rest your forearm and then you have a more horizontal position. So even if you have a little bit of flexion in the shoulder, the fact that you are completely resting your arm on the table, you can still relax your shoulder. So that's really the position that we are looking for. And it also have a great, a little bit of impact on the flexion of the neck. So it's a little bit
Mhm.
reduced because the computer is a bit further away. So that's another good point with this position. So that's the first thing you do. So even if you don't have a mouse or an external keyboard, just by doing that, you will optimize your posture.
Yeah, interesting. And what about the 20-20-20 rule?
Yeah. So the 20-20 rule is for eye strain. So you need to consider that when you are working on your laptop, the screen is often smaller. The resolution makes the character a little bit smaller. And also it's closer to your eyes. And when we are looking to an object that is close to us, the eyes has to work in convergence. It's much more harder for the muscles of the eye. So knowing that, it's important to take breaks to reduce the eye strain and muscle fatigue. So the 20-20-20 rule is pretty simple. What you do is every 20 minutes or so, you look at an object that's going to be around 20 feet away and for 20 seconds. So what it does is actually allows your eyes to, the muscle of your eyes to relax and recover. So it's a micro break for your eyes, simply.
And it's important because if we were at work, we would stand up, we would go to the coffee machine, we would go take a walk. But
Mhm.
when at home, I don't know for you guys, but I can stay quite a bit, a few hours in front of my laptop.
Exactly. So it's much more important at home.
Yes.
Yeah, and if a break is good for your eye muscle, well, it's also good for the rest of your other muscles. As it is recommended often in the office, micro breaks and stretching exercise should be incorporated as often as possible in your day. Ideally, we would do it at least once an hour, and it's a good practice in all workplaces. But in the context of teleworking, as the environment in which you work is not always ideal, it's even more important to do them regularly. So there are 4 basic rules to follow. The first one, well, do it regularly and ideally before experiencing any discomfort. So we say at least once an hour, and then maintain the stretch or execute dynamic movement like shoulder rotation for at least 15 seconds. And when you're stretched, you want to avoid sudden movements to not injure yourself, obviously. And finally, you should feel a light tension in the muscle and no pain at all. So if it's too uncomfortable, then you need to reduce the stretch.
Yeah, we're not in the no pain, no gain situation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're not at the gym. I well, yes. Can you maybe talk about these stretching exercises that Entrac is proposing?
Yeah, those exercises are aiming at the region of your body that are most solicited during computer work. So what you see on top left is for the neck and the shoulders, and then on top right you have for the forearms. So the muscle on top and under the forearms, and bottom left you have for the chest and the back. And finally, on the lower right, you have behind the legs and also for the glute. So those are just example of what you could incorporate during your day. But like I said, these are stretching exercises, but you could also do some dynamic movement. The important thing to remember is not really a specific exercise. It's just to move regularly to activate blood circulation and although better oxygenation of the muscles, and which it will instantly make you feel better. So that's what I want you guys to remember.
Good. So far we've covered the ergonomic portion with the laptop, but now from now on we'll take a more global look or approach at how to get organized in this temporary situation.
Yeah, exactly. So you can find yourself into 2 different situations. So the first one is the one you see on the screen, is that you have a desk and an adjustable chair, which is great because the only thing you need to do is to adjust your position properly, like we discussed before, following the tips that you see on the screen. So that is definitely the ideal situation. But the thing is, I don't think most of us are in this situation.
Yeah.
So if we go to the other slide,
Yep, sorry.
That's okay. So we have situation 2, which is for the rest of us, including myself, who don't have access to this kind of equipment at home. Well, in this case, the first thing you need to do is to look for the right work surface. So we want something flat and solid, which allows you to put the computer directly in front of you. We want to avoid at all costs being in rotation at the neck or the back. Having the computer or the screen on the side. So we really want you to have your screen, your mouses, and your mouse and your keyboard right in line in front of you. You also want some space to have your document next to you. So that's what we are looking for. And knowing that, well, for the majority of you, the kitchen table will be the best option. But then again, adaptation will be necessary in this case.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on.
Yeah. So the first adaptation for if you work at the kitchen table, for example, is related to the height of the table. So kitchen tables, which are designed for eating, are generally a little bit higher than a work desk. So for this reason, and depending on the chair on which you are sitting on, you will likely need a cushion or a pillow to elevate yourself. The objective is to have, like I said earlier, the elbows at the height of the table, because if this is not the case, we end up with pressure points on the wrist or the forearm, so or elevated shoulder. It's one of the others. So the first thing you need to consider is to elevate yourself. So, well, yeah, well, now we see the difference between the two positions. So on the right, we see like the elbow is a little bit lower. We see the pressure points and also the posture of the neck. So by using the pillow like on the left, you get a much better position, much more closer to the neutral posture that we were talking earlier.
Absolutely.
And so the second adaptation, if you use a kitchen chair, is to use a cushion or a towel, for example, to support the lumbar hollow. One of the most important features in the office chair is the shape of the backrest, and which will have a prominence and an adjustment in height to properly support the low back, like we said earlier. So what we want, this is exactly what we want to recreate with the towel or the cushion. We really want something that will push at the low back to get this natural curve that we are losing when we are sitting. So like you can show the picture, Amélie.
Sorry. I have a hard time with the pointer.
That's okay. So again, you can use what you have at home. That's a funny example. I have a colleague who has a pretty deep lumbar hollow, and you just find this solution super comfortable for him. So you use a sweater that he just passed through the paper towel roll. It just squishes a little bit when he he leans on it. So he's just good with this. But another example would be the towel that is used now. So my colleague, she just taped it because she was tired of having it moving around. So she taped it to the chair. And that's another example. It's a sweater that has been enrolled. I don't know, you can say that, rolled around the manches.
The sleeves, yes.
The sleeve, exactly, thanks. So, and then she used the sleeves just to attach it to the chair and move it around to fit her lumbar hollow. So
it's pretty creative.
There's a lot of good ideas. Yeah.
I don't think I would have thought about that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, but not least, well, we have the last adaptation is it's regarding the feet and the ground. So by raising yourself with a cushion or a pillow, it's pretty possible that your feet are no longer touching the ground or not completely. So in this case, you can use books or a rigid box or a briefcase or whatever you have that is firm and stable, just to ensure that you can put your feet and it's going to support your weight. So once again, there's different way to do that. I don't know if you can show Amélie. Yeah, so that's another example. It's a TV box with the foam inside, so it's super firm and it does hold the feet pretty well. And also for those of you stuck on stuck on the toilet paper roll.
Oh,
So
yeah,
if you
yeah.
have excess somewhere in your house and you don't know what to do with it, well, it makes a pretty good footrest actually. So you take 12 rolls on the side, and on top, that's actually a storage bin cover that has been used. So whatever you have in your home that is the right height for you and is stable and firm, and yeah, and will support you, the weight of your legs, will make a good footrest.
For sure. And in the previous webinar we did just before, someone actually sent a message saying you might want to put a towel underneath the toilet paper because if we run out of toilet papers, you do not want to waste those. I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, we need to, we need some fun with all that is happening out there. We need to light it up a little bit. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
that's true.
what I understand, Véronique, is that there are several ways, obviously, to adapt properly when we're in a sitting position. I don't know about everyone, but here at SPI, there's a strong demand for adjustable stations to work standing up. In fact, in each of the departments, we have one of those available, and some of us are quite used to using it, so we miss it. How can we create this at home?
Well, yes, it's possible actually, and I would say it's actually a good thing to do for everybody, because it's very important to regularly vary your position during the day. So even if you have a good ergonomic setup, we do still recommend to get up often and move around, and to work while in a standing position is actually a really good alternative to incorporate in your teleworking habits. So the easy way to do that is by using your kitchen counter. It's just as simple as that. And the important thing is to say is to work on a standing position like at the kitchen counter is really good, but it has to be for short periods. So I just want to emphasize that the short period thing, because the idea is not to work standing continuously for several hours, because static standing also has a drawback, just like as static sitting. So the idea is to remember is the switching between sitting and standing. That's what we are looking for, and to do so as often as possible during the day. So maybe just as a general reference, we usually recommend to change your position at least once or twice an hour, and to spend a maximum of 20 minutes standing or static standing position, like working at your countertops. So you don't want we don't want you to work like an hour, 2 hours straight. You need to change regularly.
Absolutely. And someone is asking, what about when you're very tall? And you know what? I think it's just the next slide.
Oh yeah,
So I'll let you talk about it. And if you didn't answer his question, I'll ask after.
yeah. The thing is that the countertops are at 36 inches high, so it's gonna fit perfectly for a shorter person, like 5 foot. 2 maybe. So for all of us who are taller than that, you might find yourself in the position you see on the left. So your elbow is going to be way higher than your wrist, and you're going to get a pretty big flexion of the neck. So what you want to do is to elevate the computer. So to make sure that the elbow and the wrist are at the same level, and you need to use something like a box or books that allows you to use your mouse also at the same level. That was a question that we had in the previous webinar, and it was actually a really good question. So you don't want to have your mouse on the countertop and then your laptop on the box. Ideally, you have everything at the same level.
Absolutely. Oops, did I skip one? Oh, yes, I
Yeah,
did. Sorry. The ironing board. I skipped the best. Sorry about
yeah,
that.
that's the funny one. Actually, I just want to say I didn't find out this solution by myself. I just saw it on social media like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And at first, it just made me laugh. And then I just thought it was brilliant. Why? Well, it's a stable uh, work surface, and it's adjustable. So for those of you who are not super tall, it's going to be a great solution just to alternate between sitting and standing. So I just thought I could add it into the webinar to just show people that you can be creative and find good solution at home.
Absolutely. And when we were preparing this webinar, Veronique and I, it made me laugh because I thought, hey, that's a great idea. I have one of those. And apparently, like we've let go of making homemade bread and, grocery stores closed on Sundays. I guess I've let go of ironing my, my clothes because I do not have one anymore. So if there was at some point people were running for toilet paper, people now may be running for ironing board. Anyway, I know I
Who
will
knows?
be. Yes, exactly. But that's
It,
clever. That's really cool. That this idea for me is one of the best. Yeah.
yeah, I
All
agree.
right. Yes. So it's important to mention there's a downside, to people who would be tempted to work at their kitchen counter while sitting down, right?
Yes, that's right. Regarding the work at the counter, if you have a stool with a low backrest, like we see on the picture, we do not recommend working in a seated position in this context. And that's because it's difficult to use a pillow or towel to support the back. So you pretty much have no support at all. And also it's because of the feet. It's pretty hard to find something that's gonna fit underneath the countertop and still be high enough and stable enough to position your feet. So that's why we don't recommend this position. But if you have like a high chair with a really good back, like on the regular kitchen chair, and you can still use a pillow or a cushion, and you can find something to raise your feet at the right level, this could also be a good alternative for a short period of time.
Okay. Interesting. So we've talked about posture, but how do you deal with working from home with the children, for instance, or the distraction, the husband, the wife? I mean, it's been a challenge for a lot of parents right now. It sure is one of mine, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. If I'd ask people to raise their hands right now, pretty sure that 80% of them would raise their hands. What do we do?
Yeah,
What can you suggest?
well, actually, I'm in the same boat. It's the same for me too. So if you're not alone at home, the best option is to settle in a closed room or an isolated place in the house. Um, the idea is to minimize the ambient noise and the disturbance. That being said, it's not always possible. And I think the thing is that it's easy to underestimate the impact of interruption on your efficiency, but mainly on your stress level at the end of the day or even at the end of the week. So the idea is really to be able to isolate yourself during work. Now, if it's not possible, then planning is everything for you.
Mhm,
That's the
definitely.
big solution. Well, it's the best
Oh,
option is to make a schedule with other family members to make the best compromise and plan some quiet times that are going to be suitable for video conference calls or tasks that require concentration. So unfortunately, there is no miracle. It's just the way we will have to handle the next few weeks. And also, I think I would add just be realistic. You won't be as efficient as if you would normally be at work. So it's important to accept it and just be flexible. For example, just choosing a different moment to work, maybe earlier in the morning or later during the day. That's not what we usually recommend, but for the following weeks, maybe that's what it takes to do some specific task. Yeah. And the idea is, again, is to find what works best for you in your situation.
yeah, we need to give ourselves a break, right? It's impossible to be as efficient as if we were at work. I mean, and I'm glad you mentioned it because we talk a lot about the physical health, but the mental health will also impact, the
Mhm.
productivity, and then so it's awesome. I mean, people really need to think strongly about what you've just mentioned, Veronique. Thanks for mentioning it.
Yeah. Oh, yep. So
Tips and tricks.
what you see on the screen is actually other tips and tricks that are in a document that you can find on our website, which is entrac.ca. What I don't want to look at every tricks that there is on these pictures. I just want to get more in detail with two that are really specific for teleworking. The first one is number 4. It's about using keyboard shortcuts instead of the mouse. So if you don't have an external mouse and you're using the touchpad, this tips is really important for you because as we discussed earlier, the touchpad isn't as precise. It brings pressure points and deviation movement. So what you want to do is use the mouse less. And by using keyboard shortcuts, you can download them on a list on the web. You can find them pretty easily. Choose the one that you can incorporate easily in your routine and practice them. And there will just become as simple as Control C and Control V. So paste and cut, and so it's really going to help, like using the tab key or windows and the arrow to move around the display windows. So that's a really good thing to incorporate now in your habit. And then also on the other slide is number 6. Number 6 is actually for people who have access to an external monitor, but still want to use their laptop as a second screen. So if you're in this situation, you need to position both screens depending on how often you use them. So if you use both of them half and half, you are going to position them like you see on the left. So the junction between the two screens is going to be right in front of you. That way we reduce the rotation of the head of the neck for the usage of both screens. On the other hand, if you have one, like the external monitor is your main monitor, and the other one is just for consultation from time to time, you're going to position your main computer screen right in front of you, so you are on a neutral posture for most of the time, and then you might have to rotate your head a little bit more, but since it's not often, well, it's not such a problem. So you can choose to put the screen on the right or on the left. This it doesn't matter. It's really depends on how you feel and your space you have.
There's actually a question about that, Véronique. Paul is asking, what's the angle in terms of the screens that we see, the two options we see there? What's the angle in terms of, tipped forward or backwards? Is there
Oh,
a
okay.
recommendation?
No, well, actually, there's no precise recommendation. What you want is you want to incline the screen a little bit back just to reduce any glare that you would have in your screen. That's pretty
Okay.
much the only recommendation we have. So it depends on the lighting you have over your workstation. But what you have to do is just tilt a little bit the screens so you see the information properly without any glare.
Okay, good. I hope it answers your question, Paul. All right. So if I summarize, Véronique, the first thing I remember from everything you've mentioned is we need to adapt well, but above all, we also need to take the time to do it. I mean, we need just to stop and set our place and make sure that we're ready for this, because this temporary teleworking situation may last a couple or a few more weeks, right?
That's exactly it. Although the situation is temporary, it is worth taking the time to properly adapt your work environment, find the alternatives that works for you. And if you work at the kitchen table, for example, like I do, take the time every morning to prepare your workstation. I know it's annoying. I do it
Yes.
every night before we prepare dinner, and then in the morning it takes time, but it really will have a great impact on your comfort level, but also on your health in the long run. So definitely take time to do it. And also the other thing to remember is just move regularly. Even if you have a good setup, if your position is not ideal, is even more important. But nonetheless, the human body is made to move. We are not created to be on a computer for many hours a day. So teleworking or not, you need to move regularly. So go outside, take a walk during the lunch break, take your phone calls standing, walk around in the house, just micro breaks, like we said, do some stretching exercise. This is probably the most neglected tips that people hear, and they just don't do it because they don't think it's going to be that much of a deal. But
Mhm.
honestly, it's really going to make a good impact on your comfort and on your health in the long run also.
Absolutely. And you know what? Just a little trick that I did one night is I did not want to take off the setup I had done. So I the kids had supper in the living room. We made this like like a fun night. So at some point, if you've had a long day and you don't feel it and you just yeah, whatever, I won't do it, then think of alternatives like this. Be creative and like you've mentioned earlier, give yourself a break. Give yourself the
Mhm.
right to say, you know what, I'm leaving my setup like this for tomorrow and we're going to do camping in the living room for supper. That's another way to see it.
Yeah, I agree.
So you've mentioned about being creative.
Oh yeah, so the last point is just be creative. You have all kind of example that we showed during the webinar. I think there's one more even there. Um, Use what you have at home. Just remember to follow the ergonomic principles. So what you use is not important. What's important is the position in which you will perform your work, that is. So whatever you have, just use it as long as it allows you to get close to the neutral posture that we talked about.
Good. So it's now time to answer your questions. There's a few which I kept for the end because they were very interesting. Um, so we okay. Jen is asking, can we work sitting on a couch or in our lazy boy at some point if we feel like pressure points? Veronique, I think there's a good reason why you haven't talked about this, but I'll let you respond to Jen.
Yeah, actually, we don't recommend working on the couch. I agree with you, Jen. Sitting on the couch is comfortable. It's soft and cozy. But the thing is that when you perform work, you don't want soft and cozy. You want something stable and well adjusted for you. So I would say there's probably three good reasons why we wouldn't recommend working on the couch or a lazy boy. The first one is for your back. The cushion being soft and the lay back position also isn't really supporting your back. So even if you use pillow and cushion, and you might get closer to a good posture, but it won't still be a good support for your back. And I think the most important thing is the neck. For your neck, because you are a little bit laid back behind, and also because the laptop is going to be on your lap or on a little cushion. The laptop is actually much lower than if it would be on the table, and so you will have a much greater flexion of the neck. So that's not the kind of position you want to be for a long time. You're gonna feel discomfort and fatigue pretty soon. And also would just say, like, right now we are all stuck at home. We don't have any social activity or gathering at night, so we all just spend a little bit more or a lot more time in front of the TV. So maybe just not use the couch for work
Yeah.
also. So just change around. And like I said earlier, if you're not comfortable, you have pressure points. The couch, for the 5 minute for 5-10 minutes, it's okay, but the idea is just to get up and work in a standing position or just move around. That's going to have a greater impact on your comfort in the long run, and it won't cause issue also. So that's why we don't really recommend working on the couch.
Very good point. I will turn on my webcam for the question period. I forgot someone just mentioned,
Oh,
hey, your webcam.
sorry.
You're right.
Oh, mine, is it working? Yeah, it is.
Yes, I
Okay,
see you good.
good.
Okay. All right. Other questions that we have. Is the lighting important when talking about ergonomics and where to set up and so on?
Yeah, it is. It is because of the eye fatigue and the eye strain. There's two situations that you don't want. You don't want to have like a window right behind you because it's going to produce glare in your screen, so you won't be able to see properly, and it's going to be really fatiguing for the eyes. The other situation is you don't want the window to be behind the screen. In this case, contre-jour, I don't know how to say it in English. It's
That's a good
that's a good
one. I'm not
question.
sure either. Yeah.
It's just to
Maybe
have
someone
some
will chat it us, chat it for us. I
please
don't know.
translation. Well,
Contre-jour.
actually, it's when you have a lot of light
Counter day.
behind,
Yeah.
and what it's actually do is it's really fatiguing also for the eyes, and that's the kind of situation that you don't want. What you want to have is the window next to you, so not in front or not behind, and you want to use some Windows treatment like blinds or anything that could block the direct sunlight. If it's possible, not have like the direct sunlight in even on the table because it might reflect also. So that's pretty much it. And just make sure that you have enough ambient lighting just to see the paper properly and to be comfortable.
Good. All right. I know you've talked a little bit about it, but someone is asking, what's the recommended height for to work at a table?
Okay, so the
Just
recommended
clarify that.
height
Yeah.
is the height that fits you.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I know it's not a funny answer. It's just what you need if you work in a standing position. You want the work surface to be at the height of your elbow when your shoulder is relaxed. So just underneath the elbow. That's what the height you want. When you are sitting, it's actually the same thing. So when you're sitting, you want your shoulder relaxed, and the height of the table should be around the height of your elbow. So that's why at the kitchen table is much higher than this. That's why we recommend using pillows or towels to raise yourself.
It's not so much of a question, but it's more of a comment from Jackie. The aches are beginning to come out, and the fear that these pains will persist is very present. Obviously, yes, I think we hear you, Jackie, and that's why we organized this webinar today, and that's why Véronique is here to answer your question and to give you the tips and tricks and the good postures and so on. And actually, Véronique, you wanted to maybe present the resources?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if you guys go on our website, entrac.ca, you can find a practical guide summarizing what we discussed today. It's in French, English, and Spanish also. There's also a short video. It's 4 or 5 minutes max, and it presents all the alternative that you can do at home. It's easy. It takes less time. So if you want to share with your colleagues, it's also a good option. And then there is the webinar. Right now it's just in French, but the English version is coming soon.
For sure. And I may also mention that this webinar will be available for a replay. So we will send you an email today or tomorrow with the replay link. So you'll be able to watch it again. So if you've missed some important information, you'll be able to get it. But by all means, visit Entrac's website to get that guide and to see those capsules and those videos. That's a great place for resources. Thanks for
Exactly.
sharing.
And we're also teleworking, so we're hoping. I'm at work, so you have my information, contact information, so I'm available.
Good. If you guys have any more questions, I invite you to email us. You'll have the email in just a few slides, but I just want to say that SPI also is still open. We are an essential service, so we are in operations. However, we take every single precautions for our employees and our customers. So we do ask you to use our website or to call in, but not to show up to any of our branches in order to respect like the social distancing. Yes, sorry. And we have people you can chat. So if you have any concerns, questions, you need anything, we're here to help you. We're here to support you through this unfortunate situation. And obviously, we revised our operations according to the authorities are putting into place. We won't say it enough. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Make sure that that your life and your health is your main priority. And as I mentioned, if you have any questions, you can reach us through the email. Yes, the email that's on your screen right now. Again, we'll ask you to answer our short survey that will be very beneficial for us. If you have any other topics you would like us to address within that COVID-19 era, if I can say, because at this point I think it's going to become an era for, it's something. Then by all means reach out. A big thank you to you, Véronique, for your time, your expertise, for your answering all of these questions. It's awesome.
Oh, it was a pleasure, Emily. Thank you too.
Um, Please visit our website, call us if anything. And on behalf of Entrac and SPI, thank you very much. And stay safe, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Bye bye.
Bye, guys.